Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League.
And next up, we have Newcastle. A lot of movements. I mean, we kind of expected even more movements, and I know there's a lot more on the way. Obviously, it's a team that finished high, and Eddie Howe kind of like turned things around over there, and they made a good run, and they've kind of like added some good pieces. So, Gally, let's start with you on this one. I know like Botman is obviously a good addition that we had. It was Liverpool's radar for a while, and it was spoken about a lot, was almost with us and stuff like that, if you believe the rumors. And obviously, Nick Pope, I really like as an addition because I think he's like a really good goalkeeper. So, what do you make of their off season so far?
Yeah, I really like their offseason. I think even making the Matt Target move, pulling that in as a permanent signing, was a big get for them. I think they strengthened defensively down the second half of last season after Eddie Howe got in there, which is crazy to say. Eddie Howe showed up as manager and the defense got better, but maybe taking a year and a half off, let the man actually learn some of his own mistakes. And I think he was waiting because, they say he had like 3 or 4 Premier League jobs offered to him and the Celtic job, and he turned all of them down because he was claiming that he wasn't taking his next job until he had the right one. And then he took the Newcastle job in a relegation zone, and everyone was like, what the fuck's wrong with you, Eddie? Like, what the hell? Are you just broke? Everyone but Gally, who was like, this is going to be good. It's going to work. And I'll be right like once last year, and that was Newcastle was good. And I mean, them finishing 11th on 49 points is arguably remarkable for where he took them over. And they improved so much with their January additions. I think you have to include those in the ins when you're talking about what you should expect for this year. So, Bruno Guimaraes was their best player the second half of the year. Chris Wood scored some goals while Callum Wilson wasn't healthy. And, I think Trippier's never gotten enough credit. He's a decent left back, and he's amazing on a set piece. And those type of players, we've seen it with our right back. It can win you games when you have a game changer at a fullback position. And I think stealing him from Atletico was a huge deal, especially when Atletico didn't want to give him up. So I like what Newcastle did. I like that they've strengthened again. I think Botman's a huge signing, and I think Newcastle is going to push on. I think Newcastle is on their way to being a very, very competitive side in this league for a while.
I mean, they really have not lost a lot, so that's obviously helps the cause. And one thing that I was not afraid, I guess, but I was kind of like, I wanted to see what they would do. We know the influx of money coming in, but they kind of like looks like Bickler on the track to build slowly, and they didn't just go around and like started snatching people and getting way too many people for Eddie at the same time.
Well, I mean, we talked about this on earlier pods, right? We talk about like what it looks like when you're a team and you make 5 or 6 additions at one time, what that looks like for the culture in the locker room, and what it looks like for the fluidity of the team. And so I think there's something to be said about a slow build, right? And getting the right pieces at the right time. And they seem to be hitting on all their pieces. When Eddie Howe took over, I thought, well, this is going to be a team that looks good offensively, but they're going to struggle defensively, right? So, like in typical fashion, I was like a swing and a miss. I mean, you look at them and they allowed 20 goals in the last 19 games of the season. It's the 5th best defensive team in the Premier League of the entire last year of the season.
It's crazy.
Offensively, Wolves and the 3 relegated teams were the only teams that had a worse expected goal ratio. So, like, it's totally flipped from what I expected. So I think a lot of their success this year is going to hinge on whether they're able to find an identity up front. I love Callum Wilson. I don't think he's durable enough. I think that they got to find an option up front. I think that they got to find somebody that they can build around, a big piece that they can build around, and pair with Bruno Guimaraes, because I think he's a hell of a footballer. And I think if you can find a talisman for this team with Bruno behind him, I think they're going to be a real tough team to come up against.
And they're trying to get that guy from Chelsea, aren't they, Gally?
They are. They're going in for Broha. I don't know if they'll get him. I'd love to see that move. One for my fantasy team, but really for Newcastle as well. I think Broha is a good striker. I think he needs more around him. I think he needs players to actually create for him, which I don't know if they're doing enough of that yet. So they really swung hard for the I can't pronounce his name. It's the French striker who ended up at PSG. They actually had a transfer completed for the player. It was like Aketia, or it's not the guy from Arsenal, but I forget his exact name. The deal was done. They agreed the transfer. They couldn't come to personal terms with him. He probably wanted twice as much to have to live in Newcastle. But the truth of it was he ended up at PSG and he took less money on the salary, and it was a smaller fee. And it was a huge knock to them because they worked on that deal for almost a month. So they really thought it was the guy they were looking for and targeted. I'm with Paul there. I think they need a number 9 striker. I think they got so much out of Joe Linton last season. They realized, wow, we bought a number 9 and he's really an attacking midfielder. If we just ever knew and we played him in the right spot, it would work. And him and Gomeris really look great. Almiron gives them a lot of effort and industry on the wings. They have a lot of great pieces. But Callum Wilson just can't stay healthy enough, because if he could, I think he can score the 15 to 18 goals you need out of a striker. You know, I would love it if they were the ones to sign the Italian kid who's going to West Ham. I think he would have been a great signing, Sakamaki or whatever it is. There's a few strikers out there. There just aren't that many goal scorers switching teams right now. And I think that's really hard. I hate saying it. They probably should have went for Richarlison, and it probably would have fit the people of Newcastle like a bleeping glove.
Honestly, Richarlison, I don't know if Richarlison would have wanted that move personally. I mean, I guess money talks, but Bickler, I mean, do you think, your expectations, like you were saying, kind of like came across completely? Is there a fear now, though, that looking at that, they're suddenly say, we go back to the old Eddie Howe, where you're like, we're just going to play more attacking football to solve these problems, and then kind of like lose your shape in the back?
I think there's going to be a regression on both of those. I think they'll probably be not quite as good defensively, and I think they'll probably be better going forward. I think just law of averages, that probably evens out. The interesting thing about them is they're just linked with everybody. They're linked with literally everybody. Draxler, Harrison, Paqueta, Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Gordon. I mean, they're linked with everybody. The one that I find interesting is Isaac, the Swedish striker at Real Sociedad. That makes a lot of sense to me. And he's super young talent, somebody that can develop, that you can hold on to for 5-6 seasons easily. That makes a lot of sense for me. Out of all the names, I mean, there's talk about Dominic Calvert-Lewis. I mean, if they could pull that off, that would make sense. So, I mean, those two are probably my top 2 guys. But this will be interesting to see what pans out, because they've got the spending power behind them, and they're just linked with absolutely everybody right now.
And that's the thing. I think that's coming from the money that's available. Yeah. Sources kind of shady, but that's a different story. Is it kind of like a tough and tricky time to be a Newcastle fan in that sense, you think? Or are Newcastle fans just grateful that the money was spent? They got, they are in the Premier League still, because that was like a big danger. And
I mean, this is probably, if you're a Newcastle fan, this has got to be the best you felt in like 15 years, I would think.
I was going to say, Mike Ashley's not there anymore, and therefore
I guess that's enough by itself, right?
They can hold their nose. They can hold their nose, look the other way, not say anything negative. Well, they probably want to keep their heads.
Yeah, you got to be careful keeping your heads with those owners. But yeah, I mean, I guess getting rid of Mike Ashley by itself is probably a blessing that will last for decades of happiness there. But so where do you guys see them moving forward in terms of like in the standings? Do they keep this run going? Because I feel like some of the defensive, I guess this is my concern that I keep coming back to. I think when Eddie Howe took over, I mean, the kind of like the thinking was, let's play it safe, at least get the points, and if we, snatch a goal here and there, will go for the 3 points. Obviously, when a new season starts, that's not really as much of the concept anymore. So do they, Gally, I'll start with you. Do they keep the projection going up and move up to maybe like the top 10 in the coming season? Or do you see them kind of like struggling again like they did last year?
I wrote down 7th to 11th. And I genuinely believe that, we talked about the January signings. We probably don't give enough credit to them stealing Dan Burn from Brighton and it changing everything. Because honestly, Dan Burn went in and became the centerpiece. And now they have Botman, which paired with Burn gives you two legitimately monsters in the middle of the pitch. And they signed a goalkeeper that is 3 times as good as Dubravka in Pope, who we've seen, if there's defensive solidity in front of him, can be a really great shot stopper and organize a defense. You have Target, you have Trippier. I think you have some depth there. And I think if they can figure out a way to score goals, I think this team is on. If you ask me what Premier League team is on the upward trajectory that isn't an Arsenal, a Spurs making good signings and building, I'd say it's probably Newcastle as the team that is doing the best business over the last 2 windows. And when you add in a manager and the ability to get that amazing crowd that fills in St. James Park that we can all see over Paul's shoulders, and everybody will tell you when you go to play there, like, it's not like playing anywhere else in the Premier League. There's 70,000 fans going crazy that love their club as much as any others. I think that there's some really good things happening for Newcastle, and a 7th to 11th, maybe a deep cup run, like that's what Newcastle's goal should be. If I were Newcastle, I'd be trying to win the League Cup or the FA Cup, because they actually have a team that might be able to do it if you focused on it, and their fans would go absolutely crazy for a day at Wembley.
Yeah, man, St. James Park is that big, really?
It's the second biggest ground or third biggest ground in the Premier League.
Really? I was not aware of that. I know, I mean, you hear about, ex-players talking about what a tough place it is. There are certain stadiums that are tough places to go to and play. So it's definitely a team that has that on their side in terms of like the home crowd advantage. Where do you see them ending up, Bickler?
Yeah, I kind of have them in the 7 to 8 range, like in that little pocket right there. But man, we talk about like teams that have the potential to like basically go down in a fiery burning flame. Like we look at what United is right now. We look at what the potential for Chelsea is to be. And I'll tell you what, with Leicester being in a kind of a vulnerable spot too, if those teams, there's multiple teams that if they dive and they kind of burn, I could see Newcastle jumping those teams. Say West Ham doesn't perform, Newcastle's going to jump them. I'm bullish on West Ham, so I don't think it'll happen. But I think there's opportunities. There's 4 or 5 teams in front of them that have the potential to have not great seasons. And if Newcastle finds a way to score goals, I think they will jump those teams.
Yeah, I think I have them definitely in the top 10. I just kind of like trust what they've done so far. And I've been like impressed with what they've done so far. It was probably a lot more tempting to just put some like big money on players that maybe not fit their style, but they've kind of like done the move smart and invested smart. And I think they kind of continue to do that in this offseason. I was like, oh, maybe that was because just to stay up kind of a deal when they did those key moves in January, but they've kind of continued to do that. It's kind of like making some smart moves over there. I agree with Gally. I think Pope is like a great goalie for them. The only thing is, I don't know, depends on like the style, I guess, Newcastle plays. Sometimes these goalies that play in a team like Burnley, where they're gonna have like 50 shots and pretty much the game is gonna be played in their box, can sometimes struggle when they go to a team that's gonna play an attacking style. But I don't think Newcastle is gonna play that open and kind of like follow up on like what they did last year. So I have them in the top 10 as well. I don't know if I'm as bullish as like, higher in there, but I still say like 8 to 10 probably. And I think Gally had called it last year that Eddie Howe would do well over there. And he was like kind of advocating for his hiring in the podcast, and that definitely has paid off for them. I think that was like a good move on their part. So we'll see how he continues this year.